This conference will now be recorded.
So hi, everyone. This is the AnCan high-risk advanced recurrent prostate cancer group. And I'll be moderating tonight. I'm Len Sierra. It's Tuesday, September 27. We want to thank our sponsors, Bayer and
Pfizer.
sorry, Bayer and Pfizer. And we're going to start off with a note from Rick Davis, our founder. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah,
Recording?
we are recording. Yes, we are. This is not a duty that I really sought or wanted, but we have to tell you about the loss of one of our really dear members, even though he wasn't with us for that long in terms of the group. But we heard this week that Steve Saft died, I think on September 15th. And for me, it was a shock. And I think it was for most of the other people. The moderators were aware, and a couple of other people, Carl, who introduced him to the group, we informed. From what we understand, it was actually Dr. Narayan that let me know at the request of Steve's wife, Ellen, because she couldn't find my contact details. And we've since been in touch with Ellen, and we let Dr. E know, and she was pretty shocked. I guess around the last time I spoke to Steve was just when he came home or was about to come home from the rehab. And I can only think that things went down pretty quickly from there. And he was in hospice. I don't know for how long, maybe a couple of weeks. Can only think that he wasn't up to talking with us. Maybe it was too emotional. I don't know. But I have to believe it's what he wanted. We did reach out. I know I called him a couple of times. I know Herb called him a couple of times, and it was clearly what he wanted. So we respect that. Steve didn't come to us until around 15, 18 months ago. And it's one of those situations. Steve was an ABC guy, anything but chemo. And we turned him around on that. But I feel like we turned him around too late, because by the time he got the chemo, he was kind of late in the queue for the Pluvicto, and then he couldn't get the regular Pluvicto, and then he had to jump through hoops, and all the time the cancer was eating away at his back and making him feel worse. I just read a piece of research, which I'm going to feature next week, that talks about survival based on your PSA reduction when you get Pluvicto. And he got lutetium and actinium, and he didn't do that well on it. But Len, who is not a member of the tribe, described Steve as a mensch, and he was a mensch. And we'll miss him dearly. And I hope that as we move forward and we find men in similar situation, we can get to them early enough that they can get the right treatment. I have to say that even though he was at a center of excellence in Philly, he wasn't getting the right treatment. And it made it was up to us, and we did it to show him that he wasn't getting the right treatment, and he made the changes he needed to make, but he made them too late. And that's all. Gary, thank you. George, thank you for putting the obituary in there. I added him to the to the in memoriam page immediately, and we've gone back and forth with his wife. If anybody wants her email, just drop me a line. I'd be happy to pass it on to you, but I think already a bunch of guys reached out to her, and maybe if there's anything else anybody else would like to say about Steve before we move to John Madden, then please do so. I'd invite you to add anything you'd like to anybody in the group.
This is
I would
Carl,
like to say
and
something.
I got to know Steve approximately a year before him joining this group here, and I had recommended the group to him. And I know he did get valuable information from here, from this group. We met via another chat, Health Unlocked, and so I didn't know his name, he didn't know my name, but we started private messaging each other, and we had a good number of things in common. And so I learned a lot about him and about his life and about his struggles, the treatments that he was looking for. And I got to know him pretty well. He was a tall man, he was 6'6". He was a big athlete. He was a star basketball player in high school and college. And he always believed in being fit and athletic. He told me in his basement he had like almost a full complement of the gym that he would use on a regular basis. One thing in particular that sticks in my mind is that he had called me while he was driving from the Philadelphia area into New York, where he was having treatments at Weill Cornell. And he was telling me how painful it was sitting in the car, driving by himself into the city over 2 hours. And he had the seat all the way back, but he was dealing with a lot of pain. We commiserated over possible treatment options, and I did recommend Dr. Tagawa at Weill Cornell, where he did have that actinium and lutetium combination, but as Rick said, it was probably too little too late. But he was a very philanthropic man over a good number of years. He ran his own garment manufacturing business in the Philadelphia area, which he took over from his dad. And that was, I really bonded with him, and it was very difficult for me to hear. And it was through Rick's email, which I thank you for copying me on that group email, because I wouldn't have known. He was on my list to call. I had spoken to him in a couple of weeks, and actually the conference that I mentioned briefly that was in Manhattan on a week ago, Sunday, and Cora Steinberg was there, and of course Dr. Tagawa was there. So both of them would have known him as a patient of his. I don't think they would have violated client and patient confidentiality, but I was tempted to ask them because I hadn't heard from Steve. So I'm glad I didn't, because he had already passed at that point. So it's a difficult blow.
Thank you. Anybody else like
Yeah,
to?
I would. I mean, I was the one that sort of initiated this thing this week, because I called Steve just before the holidays, put a message on his phone, and then Rick looked at his email from and found out this information. It was very sad for me, because even though I didn't know Steve very long, I really liked him very much, and I really was hoping that the things that we could do for him would make a difference. And it was just, I talked to him a lot, and it was just, it was like I had a new friend, and I do miss him.
Yeah. Thanks, Herb. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, May, we of course wish his friends and his family much comfort, and may Steve's memory always be a blessing for us. Len, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Herb. All well stated, and we're going to miss Steve for sure. Okay, we're going to start today with a new member, John Madden. And I believe you were on long enough last week, John, that you understand this interview process we go through. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then you respond as I go through the questions. So first, can you tell us how old you are, where you live, and how did you hear about AnCan?
I'm 53. I live in Houston, Texas, and I have a friend named Madaf who is, he's in this group. He doesn't always participate. He's last I spoke with him, he was doing very well. So he's he said he'll tune in again later, but some other time. But he's doing pretty well. So that's good to report. And yeah, he's 50.
Okay, John, I'm sorry, I missed your age.
53.
53. Okay. Are you aware of the under 60 group we have?
I saw it. Yeah.
Okay.
And who was it that brought you to the group? I'm sorry, I missed that too.
Okay. Should I be in the under 60 group?
No. The under 60 group is complimentary, so you attend both. But who was it that I missed the name of your friend who attends this group?
Madaf Mohan.
Oh yes, Madaf. Okay, yeah, great. Yes, okay. Thank you. Tell him we said hi.
Will do. Yeah, he spoke highly of you, and said I needed to be in this group. So thanks for having me.
Okay, John. So, do you recall your Gleason score and your PSA level at diagnosis? And when was the diagnosis?
Well, Gleason score is a little complicated. Back in February, I was going to a urologist here in Houston who told me that my PSA of 15 couldn't possibly be cancer, very unlikely to be cancer, because PSA goes from 2 to 3 to 4. It doesn't go from 2 to 15. And so he put me on antibiotics, and 6 weeks later tested again. That time PSA was 33. Another 6 weeks, and this is with me sending him emails saying, "Hey, I'm really, if you're not right on the infection diagnosis, I'm really screwed." And so he said, "Yeah, it doubled. So that means it's really likely not cancer." Stronger antibiotics. 6 weeks later, we'll test again, and then it's at that point it was 66. And he said, "I don't know what it is, but we have to take some scans to see what it is, and you probably have an abscess or something like that." I left that apart. I race mountain bikes, or I used to, and so he did some scans, PET, NM bone scan, and MRIs, and yeah, it's in my prostate and a couple other places, 2 bone mets, and at that point, I said, all right, he's not the world's best not the world's best oncologist, urologist, or whatever. So I moved over to MD Anderson, which is hard. At this point, I didn't have a biopsy, but he said, we'll schedule a biopsy, and for whatever reason, I continued with him to get that biopsy, and with 15 needles, somehow missed the cancer. So the last thing that he said to me was, if anybody asks me, this is not cancer. MD Anderson had a little more sense, and they they could see that it was cancer, and they set me up with a PSMA to confirm. And at that point, after their PSA test done after my biopsy, like shortly after my biopsy, showed a 111 PSA. And this is all from February of this year to June, and the PSMA showed mets on my ribs, my left iliac pelvis, and I don't know, somewhere around 10 lymph nodes. Of course, a little one on my prostate, and so almost straight to high volume. Pretty scared about it all because it's all happening pretty quick. And then they set me up with Firmagon, a month of Firmagon, and that's over with. That's no fun, by the way. And I'm a month into my Lupron, and because I had formed a little bit of a distrust. I know MD Anderson's really good hospital, top rank, but I had formed a little bit of a mistrust for just one opinion based on the story I just told. And so I've been to see Juan at Mayo and Dr. Eric Small at UCSF, and have a spectrum of opinions. Juan's opinion, the triplet approach, chemo first, targeted immediately after, and Dr. Yen, another guy that I saw here at Baylor College of Medicine here in Houston, both had the same opinion. Chemo first, targeted, probably full radiation everywhere afterwards, and then see where I'm at. And that's kind of, I guess, where I'm leaning. My doctor at MD Anderson, Dr. Siddiqui, and Dr. Eric Small in UCSF said no, just Lupron with the Zytiga is the way to go for now. And later on down the road, radiation. And so it's crazy that you have. I mean, well, when everybody here knows you have to become an expert on all the treatment options, and that every chef has a different recipe. And I know a little bit about my job, IT, computers, whatever, but I don't know if I'm right on going with the path that I'm choosing here with chemo. Any opinions on that?
So I think Quan had it right with the triple combination therapy of docetaxel, ADT, and a second-line anti-androgen, which I think is what you were saying, probably darolutamide. We just recently saw, I think it was an FDA approval, wasn't it, guys, for darolutamide? Yeah, docetaxel and ADT was superior to just ADT and docetaxel alone. So that's standard of care. Of course, we don't tell you which way to go, just tell you what the standard of care is, and you make the decision. And of course, I think there's ongoing trials to see if adding radiation to that would improve things even more.
Yeah, they mentioned a few trials that I might be a candidate for. That might be.
What about genetic testing, John? Did you have any germline testing or somatic testing?
Yeah, I have, and I don't have the lucky combinations. Seems like all the literature calls them mutations. They should be gifts, not mutations, that let you leverage the mutations for which there's immunotherapy for. But I don't have anything that they're interested in.
Nothing actionable.
Right.
So let me just follow up on that mutations. Did you actually get a biopsy or not?
Oh, I left that part out. I was scheduled to do a biopsy in early July with MD Anderson, and came in and tested positive for COVID. So they made me do that at the end of the month. So at the end of July, this is the end of July, yeah. They did a biopsy of one of my lymph nodes in through my back, and confirmed that it was adenocarcinoma. But they won't Gleason score a remote to a biopsy.
So is that what so did they send that tissue away for somatic testing, John?
Yes.
And who did they send it to? Do you recall?
No, I don't. We'll give it a my chart and see if,
So this one?
does it say who did the testing?
No, it doesn't say.
You
Maybe-
can, it's perfectly okay for your wife to be in the screen and talking to us. We love it when we have caregivers. You're under a lot of stress too, and you have questions that your husband might not ask, so please feel free to participate.
She's also a lot smarter than I. She's the one that set up all the appointments with all the other experts.
Well, I'm very impressed that you got an appointment with Eric Small, because he hasn't been taking new patients for a long time. How the heck did you do? You must have known somebody.
Well, my sister lives out there, so I don't know how. I think they felt bad and gave me a break, because initially when I called back in June, the guy I talked to was like, "Is that a Texas accent? We don't see people out of state. You have to be in state." And I said, "Well, my sister lives out there. I can be in state." And they said, "Yeah, all right, we put you on hold." And then the phone hung up. So they never called me back. And then they called back 3 weeks ago, and I said, "Yes, I'm still interested." And so I think the scheduler felt bad about my story, and
Yeah.
I had to travel to California to do the Zoom call, because you can't do in person, but you can't do Zoom in the state.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just add a few cents and then turn it to other people. I absolutely agree with Len. And I'm sort of a little surprised that Eric Small isn't buying into triplet therapy, but I suspect he's maybe basing that on not enough distant metastasis. But we have a go-to medical oncologist in Houston who's fantastic, and who was 14 years at MD Anderson until a year ago, when she moved next door to Houston Methodist and set up her own practice there. And I know, because we talked about it this week, that she's also in favor of triplet therapy. That's her go-to as well. And it might be somebody that you want to consider, because she's that good, and there are people on this call who have seen her and who can give you their own feedback. But I would have to say that hitting this hard early on makes a lot of sense. The only thing that hasn't really been discussed with you, and that's usually because they don't do it until after you're done with chemo, is what a few men on this call have done, like Herb and others, where they've actually treat the primary tumor now. And they either do that with surgery or radiation. If you finished up going to Mayo, they'd be cutting it out right now, because that's their MO. That's how they go. A lot of other places will tend to wait. Carl Foreman got he was in a trial and he had surgery Herb did radiation. I think there's other guys on here who have done radiation. All of these guys were treated de novo metastatic. This is something relatively new. 5 years ago, it was the exception. Now it's really the rule that at some point early on, you get tested. You know, it might be helpful to know what Gleason score you have, because it is an indicator for a bunch of things later on. But you could live without it. You know, is it worth going through a prostate biopsy to get it done? I'm not sure. The guys may have some comments on that. But you know, I don't always agree with Kwan. Not that I'm anybody who should maybe even be mentioned in the same breath, but I would say that triplet therapy makes a lot of sense, and I'd be really curious why Siddiqui and Small don't want to start with chemo. So did they tell you? Did either of them tell you why they wouldn't start with docetaxel?
Yeah, I'm responding very well to the Lupron, and I haven't even started on. They prescribed the abiraterone Zytiga, but I haven't even started taking it yet. I'm responding very well to the Lupron. I've made a bunch of other changes. I used to drink a bottle of wine a night. I used to eat all the wrong things. I could get away with it because I biked 2 hours a day, and so that's all gone. I don't eat eggs, dairy, meat. Taking a bunch of supplements that spend all my free time looking at NIH studies on possible compounds that will, reduce the proliferation spread of the prostate cancer, and so I'm taking a bunch of supplements and intermittent fasting and just a lot of change.
It's all good.
So
All the complementary stuff is great, and you're doing the right thing.
Can I jump
stop
in?
riding. As soon as I'm done. Don't stop riding your bike. Really important. Don't stop riding your bike. You know, that is so important. The other thing is, the evidence seems to say that, for people that have a fair amount of disease like you have, even if you respond well, that you're going to do better with early chemo. So go ahead, Herb.
Well, I think, you are an N of 1, John, and you're responding to ADT. That's great. But the clinical trials that have been published recently, there are 2 of them with different triplet therapies, one involving darolutamide and chemo and ADT, the other different triplet. Both show, in general, a longer progression-free survival. And so even though you might be doing well on this, the data would suggest that you would likely be doing better or be a member of a group that does better if you got the triplet therapy. And I think that's the key for me. I was too late. Didn't exist when I was diagnosed de novo metastatic. I only had sort of doublet just because of the timing. But I really believe that these trials show a significant increase in survival, which is why they're now, or PFS, which is why they're now the standard of care. And I would not be sure, I don't know why you wouldn't be getting the standard of care when single therapy is not, or even 2. And I will also second the idea is, my God, you're in Houston. You can get to Dr. E. Dr. Efsathiou has has shown herself to be an incredible clinician and person. And I would, I've talked to her for myself and others have as well. And if I were in Houston, she would be my quarterback without any doubt. I would, or at least talk to her. And I'm sure if Rick says she's into triplet therapy, Dr. E is really big into evidence-based medicine. And there it is. The evidence is triplet therapy is better than anything else we got. So you really should ask your docs why they don't think so.
All right. Yeah,
This is
I did.
this is John. I wanted to put in a plug for the second part of that triplet therapy also, which is that even though it looks like Lupron is just killing your PSA, if you're holding off on abiraterone because you think you don't need it, I would suggest that you go ahead and get it going. It's probably not going to make you feel any particularly different unless you're one of the unusual guys that gets high blood pressure or leg swelling or something like that. So my 2 cents would be to not hesitate on the abiraterone if you're doing it because you think the Lupron's working right. Also, I wanted to just say one thing about the supplements. Just make sure that whoever your quarterback is and your primary care doc knows what you're taking, because they're actually not all entirely safe. And there actually aren't any supplements that have been shown to make a big difference in the course of prostate cancer. I think we've heard from some of our experts that it might be a very good idea to exercise. And it would be a very good idea to maybe eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables. And it would be a very good idea to not eat highly processed meats. I doubt I have to mention smoking to you. So here's some things that really are proven to make a difference, not only in possibly preventing the occurrence of prostate cancer, but in preventing the reoccurrence once we're in treatment and want to live as long as possible. So in your enthusiasm for supplements, don't skip over these very tried and true lifestyle things either. That's my 2 cents.
John, I'm sorry you're going through this, particularly at the young age you are. I mean, this is a life-changing disease, and the story you told of working with a urologist that failed you, I mean, it was heartbreaking. And we've seen a number of people that just believed in their urologist that took them down the wrong road, but your story was terrible. Yeah, my gut feeling is you need to land on a doctor that you really feel comfortable with and trust, that will guide you, not necessarily shop around much longer. Just someone, whether it's Dr. E, whether it's a top doc at MD Anderson, I don't know, but somebody who you really trust will go the distance with you, because they're going to be with you for a long time, and you're going to be going through some big changes. Are you still working?
Yes, and I'm actually at work right now, well, at the office, but it's a small family office, and they're just really giving me a lot of room for this. Very intelligent and understanding people.
Good. Okay, so you're safe and secure there, and you've got good medical care, is what I'm getting. I mean, good medical coverage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've got disease that advances. It's pretty aggressive. It was advancing pretty rapidly, and if it was me, it would mean being pretty aggressive on the treatment end for something that's doubling that fast in terms of PSA along the way. I mean, you gotta beat it back. And as I said, you're going to be dealing with this for hopefully many years. You just don't want to turn your back on it, and you want to have a team that you really feel comfortable with.
It's really great feedback. I feel so much better about chemo as the next step.
Yeah.
And
Hey, John, this is Jim Ward. Hey, I just wanted to introduce myself and say that I'm kind of sorry. I'm sorry as well to hear about what you're going through and kind of how you got there. But, you know, I can relate in a lot of ways. I was on the cusp of 53 when I was diagnosed. My quarterback is Dr. Korn at MD Anderson. And I feel like he's a great doctor. And I know that others in this group think pretty highly of him too. But I want to say I agree with Dr. John that as well as you're responding to Lupron, which I did, I responded really well to that too. But I definitely agree with him that you should pick up Zytiga and add that to your treatment. It's certainly been shown to confer a lot of benefit. And the last thing I would say on a personal note is I know Madhav because of being treated at MD Anderson. He and I actually went through radiation treatment together. And he is just a sweet, darling guy. My wife and I were in Houston for a checkup visit in July, and we had dinner with Madhav and Rohini, and they're just a sweet, wonderful couple, as I'm sure you know. So, you know, anytime you want to chat, I'm sure that Madhav could hook us up, and I definitely think the world of him.
all right, thanks. I guess I'm not exactly looking forward to taking the Zytiga because it comes with the prednisone on the side. But I read really great things about it, and every doctor, all 4 doctors that I've been to, have said it's a good drug. It's just that I think we found one chart that Juan had posted, and it wasn't an official study. It was kind of a retrospective study that showed that the chemo, if you start your second gen after, like halfway through chemo, just a little later, that the chemo is more effective. And like I said, wasn't an official study, and I have to find that slide. Do you remember where it was? Can you look it up?
Yeah.
What I would say,
Yeah, John?
I would agree with several of the guys who have suggested that whatever your second generation drug is, whether it's Zytiga or whether it's darolutamide, that you bring that into the picture, you know, especially if you do the triplet therapy, I think as Len suggested, then that opens up the door to darolutamide, which I think most people agree that has a lesser side effect profile than say Zytiga. But I'll tell you, I also agree with Dr. John that I really didn't notice Zytiga having any impact on me that I wasn't already experiencing with Lupron. I mean, it had no noticeable effect in terms of side effects. Now, that's not true for everybody. So I guess what I would say is if you do decide to go with Zytiga and then you do have some side effects that you struggle with, then I do think there's a possibility that you could jump over to a second generation drug like darolutamide and start with that. And even some doctors will prescribe it even if you're not on chemo. So they kind of give that to you off label. There's at least a couple of guys in this group that have taken darolutamide even without having been on chemo. So I'll leave it there.
John?
Yes.
So I'm where I basically 4 months advanced from where you were. 4 months ago, I was where you are. And I started triplet therapy. I I did have a problem with abiraterone. It jumped my liver numbers way up, so they had to stop that. I've got chemo round number 5 coming up in just 3 days. The chemo hasn't really been that bad. So I'm just on Lupron and chemo. And it's really, well, the Lupron might bring your PSA down. There's more to this than just PSA. PSA is not a perfect number or not a perfect test. So chemo will help with the Mets, perhaps more than just the Lupron will.
All right.
John, I want to bring your attention to the chat box. Are you familiar with that and how to use it?
Yes.
Okay, because there are some good postings there. Someone posted, Rick posted a link to Dr. Eleni Efsathiou, and Dennis Correa mentioned getting a DEXA scan, a bone density scan.
I second that.
You've done it already?
No, I second that. I'm just getting over a broken foot and a broken collarbone from a bike slip. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, one thing on diet, you ought to take a look at the Mediterranean diet. That is really much more preferred when, well, you can even go vegan or vegetarian, but if you want to continue, like I eat 2 eggs 6 days a week, and my PSA with Zytiga just went undetectable after 18 months. So it's eggs are not the problem. Take a look at how much you eat of everything. And take a look at the Mediterranean diet. That is a good diet to follow if you eat meat, because mostly you eat fish or poultry. That's about it. Just something to take a look at, because cutting stuff out that maybe you can have some is helpful to you, maybe.
So I just I think we've got to move on. We normally can go pretty long in these meetings, but we have another meeting that follows in this room, so we have to be shorter today.
Rick, could I make one request of John? If you find out anything about that business of timing abiraterone in the middle of a chemo sequence, could you let us know? Because I don't think we know about that.
Okay.
Yeah, it would.
Thanks, Rick.
It would be helpful. If it came from one of Dr. Kwan's slides, it's possible that it was something that he had observed in his own sample. But again, Kwan doesn't do his own chemotherapy. He sends his chemotherapy out. He's a urologist. He's not a medical oncologist, but we'd all be real interested to see where that came from. But what I wanted to say is this: we do like Dr. Korn at MD Anderson very much, but it can be very difficult to switch docs within an institution. And so for you to move from Siddiqui to Korn could be a challenge. I don't know a lot about Siddiqui. I know that Eleni does, because she's mentioned his name to me. I think if it were me, and my 2 go-to docs in Houston would either be Dr. Korn or Dr. Efsathiou. And essentially with Efsathiou, you're getting exactly the same as MD Anderson, because she was there for 14 years and just moved across for political reasons. So I would say follow that up, come back next week, talk to us if you've got any issues getting to Dr. Efsathiou. Let us know. If you feel you want to stay at MD Anderson and you want to move to somebody who would consider triplet therapy, we could backdoor Dr. Korn. We have ways to do that. And I see that you're signed up already on our database, so we have your email address. And just don't hesitate to reach out. There's some really great guys. We'll support you any way we can through the chemo. And for your wife, we also have a caregivers group, and I'm gonna click that reminder for you, but you can sign up on your own. But for the time being, it'll come to John's email, and that's a group for stage 3, stage 4 of any type of cancer. But they're really good. So if you need a little bit of support there, we'd be happy to help you, and we look forward to working with you for a good while, John, and supporting you.
Excuse me, Rick.
We can talk about mountain bikes another time.
Rick, I just want to say, if John feels like he needs more time, he can have mine.
Well, thank you, but we gotta keep going because that's kind of
fine. I could.
Oh man, stop that.
All righty. Thank you, John. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Maybe give us an update.
All right.
Next, we're going to go to Jimmy Greenfield. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We can hear you,
Okay.
Jimmy.
Well, this is one of those times when I feel like even though we had a death in the family, we have a man coming in with a difficult situation. I've gone over this before with Rick and a couple of you. Sharing good news is makes me sheepish, and I want to do it. But this is it. I finished my clinical trial as far as they're concerned. I saw my oncologist. It's been 3 years since I began treatment in the clinical trial post prostatectomy, and so they're releasing me from that. It doesn't really change anything. It's just kind of a marker for that. My intermittent fevers have not returned. They gave me some more tests at the behest of my PCP for autoimmune stuff and inflammation. All are negative. Nothing has been found. I can only hope that those are over with. I had to get labs for the end of study visit. PSA less than 0.04, testosterone 738. So naturally, I'm on the good side of things. But I know that I've just learned and never to get too down when things are down, never get too high up when things are up, because everything changes, and I'm only living in the present because that's why they call it a gift, I suppose. And that's all I have.
Very well said, Jimmy. Thank you. I also share your sheepishly when it comes to just taking some time just to say, hey, things are going pretty good so far. Because of this, out of consideration for the guys who are going through more than what you or I might be going through at the moment. But hey, we need to hear good news once in a while. And I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm sure we all are. So thank you for that. Say hello to Joe Manchin in West Virginia if you run into him.
I hope I don't, but okay. I feel good news is always good to share if you keep it short, and I think I did. So I'm out.
You sure did. Thank you for that. Okay, Pat Martin, you're up.
Got myself unmuted. I started my infusion of Keytruda last Friday. So far, the only side effect would be a little bit of fatigue, but I've had that for several years now with ADT.
Could be my hearing, Pat, but I missed something there. Did you say you're on Keytruda?
Yeah, I started Keytruda last Friday.
Okay.
Is that coming through?
Would you like to compare notes with Peter, since we got the both of you here?
Yeah, why not? Peter needed time tonight also, so we can do both of you.
I'd rather wait until my time comes up.
Okay. Okay, so no side effects to report for you, Pat, correct?
Little bit of fatigue, no
Okay.
side effects.
Well, good luck. Was there anything else?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Well, Peter, I had you next on my list, so go right ahead, brother.
Okay, I will title this one, Don't Try This at Home. So I've had 2 Keytruda infusions, and number 3 is scheduled for Monday morning. The last 2 weeks, I have been suffering emotionally, physically. I've just been dragging my butt and really having a very difficult time. I mean, I've been on, this is 8.5 years for me, and I've been on and off ADT. I'm only on darolutamide, and I've been on darolutamide for 3 years. And I take it, I swear, I'm not making this up. I take 2 darolutamide tablets in the morning, and it was like taking lead sinkers. I mean, I could feel it taking me down to the bottom of the ocean right away. I mean, it used to be like maybe half an hour later, 3/4 of an hour later, I'd start dragging a little bit, but it just became so bad. And then in the evening, I'd, before bed or something, I'd take 2 more. It was just, I was not a happy camper. And I didn't know what was up, what was going on, whether it was the Keytruda, whether it's the cancer, I don't know. I am going to meet with Dr. Antonarakis on Monday, fortunately, to go over this, and we'll do blood work and stuff. But when I say don't try this at home, I talked to Len a little bit yesterday about my dilemma, and I decided to stop taking darolutamide this morning and last night. And instantly, I feel 1,000% better. I mean, that's not usually the case with ADT drugs, but I can walk upstairs now. I can go out, and I don't feel like I'm just flat out dragging myself all of a sudden. I mean, I was miserable. So I don't know if it's a smart thing. I don't know if it's, I'm going to try it for several days and see what happens. I don't think it's that risky, but I had to do something. I felt I had to do something because long-term ADT keeps you alive, right? It's just sitting there with a big scale saying quantity versus quality of life, quantity of life, quality of life. And I'm willing to take the risk right now, and I'll talk to Antonarakis on Monday and see how he weighs in and what my numbers show.
Hey, Peter. Peter.
Go ahead, Larry.
I was starting to feel that horrible oppressiveness from darolutamide in the morning. If I took 2, couldn't get myself to work. I'd have to lie down for an hour and get to work at 11. And then I was busy at work and had to be in early, and I switched to taking 1 pill, and I felt much better. And don't try this at home, but that's what I did. When people are asked the Optum specialty pharmacy says, you have pills left, I keep replacing, so every month I'm gaining a couple of extra darolutamide. And then at night, and then after a month, I started to get this diarrhea, and I started to switch tonight to taking 1 pill, not just 2 and 2, but I'm taking 1 and 1. And then a week before my PSA test, I take 2 and 2. I don't know, maybe you should think about see if 1 and 1 works. That was my suggestion.
Good thought.
Robbie put a good suggestion in the chat box here. Maybe you need to explore if there's any interaction between Keytruda and darolutamide.
I just looked it up, Len, and came up with nothing.
Yeah. I wouldn't think there's much data on that one way or another.
Drugs are new.
You know, that was exactly where my mind went, and it went there in particular because I'm in the midst of signing a contract for an advisory board with Bayer, and part of one of the clauses is that if I'm aware of any adverse events, I have to report them. They don't name the drug. And I said, I can't, how can I do this? This is what we do all the time. And now what I did say is we encourage our people to report them. And Peter, I strongly advise you to call Pooja, call Dr. Pooja, or call their line and say you're suddenly getting, after 3 years, an interaction with pembrolizumab, and report it and see what they know. I'll reach out to Pooja myself in the next 24 hours and say, we just heard this, but it just seems too weird that you've been doing fine on darolutamide. And I mean, I actually put in my comments on the agreement. The only thing we're aware of with darolutamide is a skin rash, because you had a skin rash when you first started it. Do you remember that?
That was the
Orgovix.
Relugolux.
Oh, that was the Orgovix.
Orgovix.
Okay. Well, I got it wrong. So, but I only told the lawyers that, so that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it should be reported. It definitely should be reported to Bayer. And let's see if we can dig down and see if there's anything they know. I mean, it just seems too weird otherwise.
It is, but I think I'd like to talk to Antanarakis and see what the blood work data shows on Monday morning too. I mean, I just feel, I mean, I haven't felt this good in years. I feel like I can go out and play baseball or something. I'm not making this up. It's really strange.
Yeah, but you know, again, the other thing is that, and I have to defer to Herb and to Dr. John and to Len, but I mean, when did you stop taking the darolutamide?
Last night and this morning.
Right.
This is like presto changeo. I don't get it.
Right.
I just don't get it.
So, I mean, what, gents, you know, the Brains Trust and Ben, I mean, what about the physiology of this, or whatever you would call it, the pharmacology of this? I mean, can you stop and feel different immediately?
Well, that's what Peter and I talked about yesterday. You know, he said the instant I take the darolutamide, I feel dragged down. And I said, Peter, that doesn't make sense physiologically. The drug isn't even absorbed yet. So
Right.
I don't quite understand what's going on, and Peter doesn't either, I'm sure, but definitely needs more investigation. Of course, the other thing is darolutamide is the newest of the lutamides. We've only had data on it for about 3 years now. Who knows? Maybe after 3 years of darolutamide, something happens and you suddenly feel tremendous fatigue. We don't know yet. I mean, I don't know if the other glutamides cause a similar effect after 3 years or so, or if Abby does that. Has anyone experienced a sudden increase in fatigue with any of the other second-line anti-androgens?
I mean, usually these things are not sudden. I mean, if you've been taking the drug for a long time, usually they're just not acute things. So I mean, Dr. John, what do you think?
It's not the same as you think, Herb. It is possible to feel immediately better when you stop something toxic if it has a short
half-life.
Well, not only a half-life, but a sort of a half pharmacodynamic life too.
Right.
So duration of action, in other words.
Right.
So it is possible, but it's certainly not the usual case. Russell, when we sent you to Dr. E and she said those drugs are messing you up, stop them. How long did it take you to immediately come to life?
I
Fast,
haven't
right?
yet. Well, the brain fog stopped almost immediately. I still have the fatigue. The hot flashes went from 30 a day to 10 a day, but they're more intense. So I look at it this way, that the drugs are still somewhere in my system working their way out.
But the brain effects wore off fast, right? The depression and
brain,
fog.
the brain fog disappeared real quick. Couple of days, it was extremely obvious to me that, there was something different going on inside my head.
Yeah.
Which drug was that, Russell?
I was on Lupron and enzalutamide, enzalutamide, but I call it enzalutamide.
Yeah. Okay.
And you stopped the Lupron as well?
Yep.
Yeah, I've been off Lupron for 15 months, so I don't feel that one at all in me.
Yeah, it was.
Dr. Jack, do you have any input on this one?
Yeah, I was just looking up the drug interaction, a little application I have. When I look at darolutamide and Keytruda, do not interfere on the metabolic spectrum. So they're compatible. They can be taken together. Neither potentiates the other metabolically nor diminishes it. So there's nothing reportable about an adverse interaction between the two. They say food can be an important variable. So if you're taking it with food, it really enhances the blood level of darolutamide. So it's, I guess somebody, I don't know, it should be taken on an empty stomach. That's what I'm reading right now as I was.
Peter, do you take a statin?
No.
Okay.
No, I try to stay away from too much. I'll report. I don't want to belabor this one. I'll report. You'll hear from me on Monday.
Yeah.
When I have my blood work and my next infusion, and I get some weigh-in from the doc.
Okay.
Would
Thank
you
you.
prefer that we hold off reaching out to Bayer until you have that result, Peter?
Let's wait till Monday. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Joel, you wanted time tonight? Joel Blanchett.
Yes, Rick recommended to me that I see Dr. E. And no, I don't live in Houston. I live in Virginia. And so I made an appointment with her. So I see her on 13 October at 1 p.m., flying out that morning to see her and flying back that night back to Virginia. And on 20 September, September, I had my first DEXA scan ever, and also started my first Orgovix ever. So I've only had 6 nights of Orgovix so far, and don't feel any worse for it so far. So basically, they requested that I fax to them in Houston all my medical records, which I try to do, but I found out it was going to cost me $600 to fax. So I said, the heck with that. So I mailed a copy of everything to them. It was 2 inches thick in a FedEx envelope, and they should have got it today. So, so that's my story.
Did you measure your testosterone before you started on the Orgovix?
Yes,
Joe?
I always measure testosterone. Yes, I always measure testosterone in all my blood tests, and yes, it was measured with my annual physical 2 weeks ago.
And what was it?
265.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Any questions for Joe?
What, Len?
Now, I'm asking the group if there are any questions for you, or do you have anything you want to ask us?
No, I'm preparing questions for Dr. E. I was glad that Rick said tonight that she was in favor of triplet therapy. That I don't know if that would be appropriate for me or if that'd be overkill for me, but I intend to ask her. Of course.
I obviously didn't do Orgovix because it was many, many years ago. And I also did an agonist. I honestly don't know how long the antagonists take to kick in terms of side effects. Does anybody know how quickly the antagonists, you start to feel the antagonists?
Should be quicker than Lupron because
Yeah.
the antagonists bring down the testosterone very rapidly, like a day or two. So if Joel hasn't experienced much in the way of side effects after 6 days, he's in pretty good shape.
The only thing I've noticed is that I've had pain in my right neck since I've picked up that cancer in my right occipital condyle bone. The pain is starting to go away. So that would be along with thinking that the radiation oncologist said the Orgovix will kill that cancer there also.
Sounds good. Let's see, Norm Pollock, I think you were one of the first ones on this evening, so go ahead. You're muted, Norm.
There we go. I saw the rat unk on Friday. He wants to get a PSMA PET and another PSA, even though I had one just in end of August. Nice guy. He goes, "Where are you from?" And I'm like an hour and a half away. And he goes, "I'm going to send you to a friend of mine closer." He said he's good. He'll do just as good a job as me, which kind of impressed me with him. And then I got an appointment with Dr. E the end of October, as long as I get my PSMA PET done in time. Just right now, probably waiting on insurance to get that done. And I guess other than that, not much. So.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to hearing results of the PSMA PET.
Hold on a second before we leave Norm. So who is it that's thinking of designing your radiation?
I haven't met him yet. I think he's going to wait, send me over there for PSMA PETs. A guy, he gave me his name and I didn't write it down. It was a bad day. We were looking at putting our 14-year-old dog down.
Oh dear. I'm sorry
tough
to
day.
hear that.
We just did it today, about
Oh my
3
gosh.
hours ago. But anyhow.
I'm sorry, Norm. One thing that you really want to be checking into for salvage radiation is the equipment that they're using. And you know, before you commit to who you go to, we want to be sure they're using state of the art and they are tracking you with state of the art. It's really important. And sometimes in these community facilities, they'll sell you on what they have and it might not be the best equipment. And there are guys in this room right now who have found that out and have actually changed their locations when they started looking into the quality of the equipment. So
what state of the art? I say, what is state of the art?
What is state of the art? Well, for what you're doing, it would probably be a machine that does a CT scan first and then feeds that CT scan right into the radiation equipment, so it knows exactly where you're positioned. Am I right, guys? Who's had this treatment? Who's had salvage recently with the best equipment?
I don't know if I have the best equipment, but I'm involved in the salvage right now. And I know I always start with a CT scan because they can tell me about how full my bladder is. They can tell me how full my bowels are. That's up at the Penn State Cancer Institute. And
Right.
Dr. Gainesman said that was okay, Alan. You can go up there and get it because it was closer to home.
Okay. So I think a bunch of the guys in here have now used this equipment where they do the CT at the beginning and then they feed it in, and that's probably where you want to be.
Okay.
Where you don't want to be is where there's no guidance. So you've got to be asking the guy, how is your radiation guided, and then come back and talk to us, and we have some knowledge here.
No, I wasn't going to start anything until I talked to Dr. E too. The rad onc wanted to start the Lupron fairly soon, and I want again with that too. I was going to wait and talk to Dr. E. So as soon as I can get this PSMA PET done, then I'll be able to go see her.
And I think that PSMA PET is really important. Who is ordering that for you?
I think the rad onc at UT, University of Tennessee, where the surgeon was or is, the urologist.
So I just want to update you on all of you on some correspondence I've been having this week, which is a little disappointing to me, and we're trying to take care of it. But the lower level people at Lantheus who make Pylarify, they don't seem to be too concerned about either the fact that it's prone to false positives, which we've known for a long time, and there are certain doctors that won't get it for that reason, and also the fact that some patients might want an overread if the people reading that PSMA scan are not that experienced. And both of those issues seriously concern me. They actually came back and said to me, well, we do have a service for overread, and here's the link, but it's only for the providers, it's not for patients. And I wrote back to them and said, hey guys, we're not suggesting the patients ask for the overread. We're suggesting the patients ask their doctors to obtain an overread if they don't have a lot of experience in reading these scans. And I sent this response to Mary Ann Haino, who's the president, the president of Lantheus, and I haven't heard back yet. But one thing we do know is that the Illuccix PSMA scan with the gallium-68, PSMA 11, you can get an overread, and you can ask your doc to get the overread, and they're willing to do that. So I just want to let you know, I'm really concerned about this attitude from Pylarify, from Lantheus. We'll do whatever we can to make them shape up and recognize the patient voice.
Okay. I thought I read somewhere that it goes by area where it's getting shipped to, whether you get the Pylarify or the gallium. Was that true? I don't know.
No.
Okay.
The Pylarify is completely independent of the gallium. Gallium is distributed by Cardinal Health. And if you have a Cardinal Health lab in your area, then you should be able to get the gallium. The Pylarify, because they're shipping both types of the gallium. They're shipping the locomets and they're shipping the gallium, the Illuccix. And let me see. Let me see. Well, I don't want to hold everybody up. I'll send you a note if there's somewhere in that Knoxville area where Cardinal has a radionuclide lab.
Okay.
I'll look it up right now.
Thanks.
Any
All right.
questions to anybody on, I mean, hopefully you just followed what I said, because I think it is important. It's really important that, if you're not at a center of excellence where the volume isn't high, that whoever's reading those scans has some expertise in reading the scans. That means they probably need to have read, I don't know how many, we're trying to establish that, but 50, 100, 250, I honestly I don't know. And you can ask, and you should ask them, how many have you read? They say, oh, we've read 10. Well, that's not so good.
Well,
You're
having worked with
entitled to
them,
know.
having worked with those guys, I know that. It's amazing the difference.
Right, the safest thing is you go to a major center of excellence, an NCCN hospital. You're likely to get guys who are very experienced.
Yeah.
Carl Foreman, can we go to you now?
Okay, wow, nice. I apologize if this is something I may have mentioned before, but I was in contact with Guardant regarding my liquid biopsy. Spoke to them directly, spoke to Dr. Beltran. And my discussion with the Guardant, which advertises how your doctor can determine an effective treatment through this liquid biopsy. Well, my report really didn't give us a heck of a lot of information, which we previously discussed. And what I mentioned to Guardant as well is that I said, no, I'm comparing your report to what I had at Foundation Medicine. And I said, well, all of these mutations that were identified with Foundation, you're not showing in your report. So does that mean that they're gone? And they said, no, we're just not as comprehensive as Foundation Medicine with all of those mutations that they discovered. So unfortunately, I think it was, for me anyway, it was a waste of time. And Dr. Beltran, who I spoke to earlier today, and she said typically with a reversion mutation, she would see at least 20 other types of mutations in the report. And there was nothing there for me other than a PIK or PI3CA, whatever. But so I know at the time that we were having discussion, and Herb was part of the discussion, that Guardant may not be as it's cracked up to be, and that was the case with me. So that's what I wanted.
I mean, I have to say, Carl, you heard it here first. I mean, we've been saying for the longest time, don't get Guardant. And it isn't just that we have, yes, I have an affinity for FMI. They've been great to us. They've been great to me, but they're great to our guys. But that's not what it's based at. It's based on doctors like Eleni telling me, don't get Guardant. It's a crappy test. And we tell you guys, don't get Guardant. But if you want to get Guardant, we can't stop you. But, it's not a good test. If I were you and you wanted to know where you are right now, I'd go out and get another FMI test or the other one whose name I always forget. Caris. Caris is okay, and then there's another one out of Austin, I think, that's pretty good, that measures RNA. Or San Diego. Sorry, not Austin, San Diego. I forget their name. But the Guardant test it's a bum test. I mean, it's not a bum test. It's just not as good as the other tests.
I concur. Thank you.
Okay, David Mustlin, you're up.
Okay, went to see my rad-on today, and about doing my breasts, and he basically said, we thought maybe 20 gray might be a little bit strong, but he's doing 20 gray over 5 days. It's 4 gray a day, and he says it's very, very, very conservative. He also said, and I'm talking to Shmulewitz on Friday, he said, we can do the radiation, which is unusual today because it used to happen all the time. It doesn't happen very often today, and it's just because I'm on monotherapy, darolutamide. But he said, you may also want to consider taking estrogen. and understanding the side effects of that estrogen. And that's really what I wanted to talk about tonight. Has anybody had any experience with that?
You should talk to, what's his name? Richard
Wassersoog.
Wassersoog. Yeah.
Richard Wassersoog is the expert in this area,
Yeah.
and he promotes it.
Yep.
Yeah, he's taken it for years.
Yeah, but his breasts also got large. I think he had them removed surgically, if I remember correctly. I should reach out to him, Richard.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic of using estrogen. Maybe an estrogen blocker I could see, but not estrogen. Anybody disagree with that? Herb or John?
No, it doesn't.
Maybe it's a blocker.
Yeah, this is George. I've used the estrogen patches. I was on it for probably 4 years. I'm not sure the reason why, but somehow it was for the cancer. Of course I got the side effects, and I got the breasts, and they were painful. But once I stopped using that, and I stopped the ADT, eventually my breasts, they went down in size, and they weren't painful anymore. Nothing worked either to shrink them. Any kind of medical stuff didn't help at all. So I don't think I would get any radiation, but that's just personally. I mean, I know it bothers some guys. I just don't know if anything works other than surgery or the radiation. But
yeah.
David, I'm curious if you could ask your radiation doc. So I understand, the idea is to kill the fat cells in the breast tissue, but what about the muscle in the breast tissue? What happens to that? Does that get affected?
It's a good question. It's a great question, Len.
Okay, so ask him.
I will. And I'll report back.
Probably it gets bypassed if the radiation is skillfully aimed.
Okay.
So I have a couple of things, David. First of all, I put in the chat window the webinar we did with Richard Wassersoog on estrogen, but I have a feeling we're going down a blind alley there, because I think what we're talking about here is the tamoxifen and the estrogen blocker, and not the estrogen.
Yeah.
So just be sure about that, because it's two different things. The second thing is, it just sounds high to me, this 20, whether you give it in 5 or fractions or 10 fractions or what have you. And if it were me, I'd be getting a second opinion from a completely different doc. It's a lot. And we know these docs don't back off. They can't back off. He said 20, he's stuck on 20. And they their egos get in the way. And
so here's what happened, Rick. I pushed him real hard on the 20, and he said it's not the total number. It's the amount of gray that's applied each time. So if you have 5 sessions at 4 gray each, he says it's very, very, very conservative. That's what he said.
But what happens if somebody gets 2 sessions with 4 grays each and it works? Because we've had guys who've had 8 grays.
Yeah.
What do you need the other 12 grays for?
Yep.
And I mean, I know it's about the fractions, but I think that what we're saying is, I mean, I don't think anybody has heard of that much. It's usually 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions at the most, but 5 sessions, 4 grays a time. And I would, I'd be talking to, I'd get another opinion.
Okay, I think it's a good idea.
So Rick, I've just been reading about this, and I put a couple of things in the chat window. And one of the things that the websites agree on is that lower dose radiation is okay if you haven't developed gynocomastia. And I've just put in this quote here, David, that says gynecomastia that's already developed can be treated with higher doses. So Rick, this may be the reason why somebody got 4 gray versus now his doc wants to give him 20. So I'm not sure we are comparing the exact situation.
In other words, if it's prophylactic, what you're saying is if it's prophylactic, you might be able to get away with a lower dose. But if it's interventionary, like with David, then you need a higher dose.
Right.
I'd still get. I think if it were me, I'd get an opinion from one of the UFC radonks as well.
I think so. I'm talking to Shmulowitz on Friday, and I'll see if he can recommend somebody and go see. I think it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, and as Herb pointed out in the chat box, tamoxifen has actually been proven to be better for gynecomastia than radiation. So, talk to your oncologist about that as well. Like, why not tamoxifen?
Will do. Will do. Thank you, gents. I'll keep you updated on Monday. Next Monday.
Okay, thanks, David.
Thank you.
And I just want to check, anybody else who's had gynecomastia? I mean, other than Dr. George, anybody else who's had gynecomastia wants to add to that from their own experience?
Yes, I do. I started to develop it. I took tamoxifen for a period of time, and it seemed to stop it in its tracks.
Did it reduce it?
Thanks,
Were you already developed?
I started to develop, and I started taking it, and it took for about a year, and it did not develop any further. I stopped it when I was easing off of ADT anyway.
Were there any side effects?
I can't hear David.
It brought the size down, Jimmy, as well?
Yes, it did, and also I was getting fat anyway, so it didn't hurt that I trimmed up a little bit, which was easier to do, admittedly, when I started getting testosterone return. But yeah, it definitely helped.
Any side effects? Any side effects, Jimmy?
No, none at all.
On the tamoxifen?
None.
None at all.
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, boys.
Okay. Ravi, are you still with us? Yes, you are.
Yes, I am, but the camera will not turn on for me. Yeah, that's okay. Well, it's nice to be back. So just to refresh my case, I did not have prostatectomy. Even though my cancer was
Ravi, can you get closer to the mic? You started off good and then you faded.
I see. Can you hear me now better?
Well, a little better. Go ahead.
Okay. So in my case, I had fairly aggressive prostate cancer, and what was done for me was 2 months of radiation, which ended in August of 2021. And then I have been on ADT. I finished my ADT in another 4 months. So the issue that I have, everything's going fine. The complication that I have is that I've had a fairly frequent bleeding for about the last 3 weeks or so. And I was kind of surprised because if it was radiation proctitis, I thought I should have seen that. I mean, it's been over a year since my radiation treatment has ended. So I thought I was out of the woods. But apparently you can have radiation proctitis even well after a year, and that's chronic radiation proctitis. So that's what's been happening for me. I don't have pain. It's just that I poop blood, and the blood collection also in the blood collected in the rectum also acts as a laxative, and so I have fairly frequent bowel movements. It's not diarrhea, but it's at least very urgent and bowel movements about 5 to 6 times a day. And this bleeding happens once every 3 days. It's been going on that way. So I had a colonoscopy done, and that came out. There was no tumor or anything like that, but it revealed clearly revealed the effect of radiation, the onset of radiation proctitis. And so the options that were given to me were mesalamine suppository or sucralfate enema, daily enema. And apparently the sucralfate is more effective, and that's what I have opted for. I have yet to start my enemas. I just got the medications now today. But I was wondering if you folks, any of you folks, have gone through this, and what can I expect in terms of side effects, or how effective this enema will be.
My brother had
Len,
radiation.
this is right in your wheelhouse, Len. Go ahead.
You're muted, Len. Len, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry. I've never taken sucralfate, so I can't advise you regarding that, but I did develop radiation proctitis about 20 months after my radiation. And it started off just occasional blood in the stool. And then after several months, it became almost a daily thing. Like you, no pain at all, completely symptomless except for the blood in the bowl. So I think I had tried some dexamethasone cream or some steroid cream that did not do anything, or suppository. Yeah, it was a suppository.
Was it mesalamine as a suppository?
No, it was not mesalamine. So what I eventually did was, and unfortunately, I'm having a mental block on argon plasma. That's it. I had argon plasma treatment, which is kind of like a colonoscopy where they cauterize the blood vessels that are bleeding, superficial blood vessels. Mm-hmm. So I did that at Weill Cornell in Manhattan. And the first time around, it didn't help much, but I knew that the doc had told me you probably need at least 2 treatments. So the second treatment did the trick, took care of, let's say it improved it by 90%. I still get occasional blood in the stool, but maybe once every couple of weeks as opposed to every day.
And how long ago was that?
How long ago? That was in, September 2021, so over a year. Yeah, just about a year, actually.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you.
And that's held. Mm-hmm. And so it's like having a colonoscopy, as far as from your point of view. Mm-hmm. You're prepped just like a colonoscopy. They go in there with the argon plasma, and they cauterize the blood vessels. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my gastroenterologist did not want to try that as a first resort. He said that that there are complications with that, and he wouldn't.
Yeah, they can be. Yeah, that's why my doc went very carefully, very slowly, and you don't want them to touch the rectum, because then you can from what I've heard, you can have severe diarrhea if they use that argon plasma on the rectum.
Well,
So,
wait a minute,
I'm sorry, not the rectum, the anus, you know, the very tip, yeah, the anus. But yeah, you should try the sucralfate first, you know, try the other things. And if it doesn't work, then I do recommend the argon plasma. I think John Antonucci, you wanted to say something? Your brother?
Just to say my brother had it at 1 year, just like you, Ravi. He had a more conservative treatment than Len did, which was, I think he only the steroid suppositories. Within a couple of months, he was better, and it has never recurred since, which is now 4 years.
I see. Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, let's hope for that.
Yes. Okay.
And,
Thank you.
And Ravi, I've been living with it for, oh my gosh, 13 years, I think. And at one point around 2016, I went to see the GI doc and we talked about options and he offered me the argon and I didn't bother. It's always been painless. And it happened last week. I had a small bout. It's once in a blue moon. And I've actually seen it because when I've had a sigmoidoscopy originally, and they showed me the area in the colon or the rectal area where the tissue was inflamed and sensitive, and you know, sometimes it bleeds, sometimes it doesn't. I just live with it. So, so just saying. So you know, it's not that bad, then you have to decide what you want to do.
Yeah, it is fairly bad. I mean, it is, you know, sometimes I just poop blood, and it's happening every 3 days, and then you end up pooping all through the day. So it's affecting my quality of life.
I'm sorry that you're going through it, but it's not uncommon, and it's certainly not uncommon that it starts a year out. Some guys, it doesn't start to even more. It can be 2 years, even 3 years out when it'll start. I think in my case, it was about 18 months. I'm trying to remember, but I think it was about 18 months afterwards that it happened. It started.
All right, thank you.
I've used glutamine for bowel problems for years, and referred a friend of mine who had a lot of bowel problems, had many surgeries to take it out, and he claimed it worked for him. I mean, it's pretty simple, but I quit taking it. It's for building muscle too, but I quit taking it because I read that prostate cancer feeds off of glutamine also. So I quit it, and it's been something I've been curious about. I was wondering if anybody knew anything about glutamine and bowel problem and feeding the prostate cancer. But it'll help with bowel problem. I got a cousin with diverticulitis. He takes it all the time, swears by it. It's a teaspoon a day in a glass of water, tasteless.
Mr. Moslin, any input on this one?
Okay, we've got still 3 guys and not much time. I'd like to try and get to Dennis McGuire.
Okay, hold on 1 second then. David, any input on that?
Not really. I've never had that issue. Never dealt with that specific issue.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Hey everyone, just by way of background, I completed my 6 infusions of Pluvicto in August, and today I met with my doctors at the University of Wisconsin to start planning for the next treatment. So the early plan is to just continue to do monthly PSA tests, and then when the PSA increases, most likely do a PSMA PET scan to really just figure out where the active cancer is after all these treatments. confirm if I'm PSMA avid, and then kind of go over different options. I think the options on the table for me for next treatment are more Pluvicto, or also given to me as an option was retrying a second line anti-androgen. I was on Xtandi for 2 years, and I discontinued that in 2020. So the feeling is that after radiation and the Pluvicto treatments, that another anti-androgen could be effective. So that's the status.
And where did you finish up after 6 treatments? Where did your PSA finish up after your 6th treatment, Dennis?
Yep, my PSA is 2.3.
We love it. And tell everybody, because this is the best part, tell everybody where you started.
So when I started in December of 21, my PSA was at 300.
Yeah, a couple of people looked. It got a couple of people's attention, I think.
Yeah, great job, Dennis.
So I'm
Dennis.
very curious, Dennis. I'm very curious about the conversation you had regarding rechallenging with more Pluvicto. What did Dr. Lang have to say about that?
Yeah, Dr. Lang certainly sees it as an option. He also looped in the radiation oncologist. So the way Wisconsin is structured, Pluvicto is being run out of the radiation onc department.
Mm-hmm.
So he really, this is Dr. Floberg, he weighed in on what he believes are the kind of the watchouts for doing more Pluvicto, and that's, you know, the immunosuppressive impact on the bone marrow, you know, which is indicated by the lower red blood counts and the white blood counts, the hemoglobin. And I've experienced that over the Pluvicto treatment, where I do recover after treatment, but I never get back to the levels I was at before treatment. So, you know, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of data out there to know at what point does Pluvicto and the radiation become harmful on a permanent basis.
Yeah, then another concern would be, will the insurance pay for it?
Yeah, I think that's an unknown. I'm on Medicare, so that would be one gate we'd have to get through before we pursued that.
In one of the meetings, they specifically said that they do not cover it by Medicare. I don't know if Rick remembers that, but I do.
Mm-mm. No, I don't.
Dennis, you didn't use insurance for your first 6, right?
No, it was expanded access.
Right. So I'm not even sure that Medicare knows you've had it. Right. So my sense is if they thought it was useful, it would be covered. But that's just a guess because Medicare obviously does not have records that you got it.
Yeah.
One thing we can definitely do is as the as we get nearer to that time, we can find out what Novartis is doing with respect to Medicare and rechallenging. I mean, I'm sure it is on their radar, and I'm sure that they're maybe doing, well, I think they are doing some trials, but where they don't have a lot of data. But it'll be easy to find out from Novartis where they stand on that. And, you know, they may be willing to make the arguments, or I can only imagine it's a matter of time before rechallenging with Pluvicto is going to be standard of care, provided that it doesn't do any damage. Herb, what do you? I mean, this is a topic near and dear to your heart as well.
Well, yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, obviously, I have my 4th treatment tomorrow, and they're definitely watching my hematology to make sure it's not doing anything. And luckily for me, it's not doing much. It's not touching any of the numbers. So that's good. But I think it's something we all got to worry about is, whether we'll be able to, if it's working, whether we'll be able to continue.
Yeah, Dennis, how are your blood counts?
Yeah, they've definitely dropped. I'm just pulling them up right now. Let's see how quick this is. Here we go. Hemoglobin is 10.5, red blood cells 3, white blood cell 2.3. That was as of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. How about platelets?
Platelets 120.
Okay.
So you're still not in danger territory. You're
No.
low.
Yeah.
I mean, my latest hemoglobin today was 11.3, which is lower than I'd like it.
Yeah. Yeah, the Wisconsin docs believe I could tolerate more Pluvicto now, as do the Chicago doctors. They believe I can handle more Pluvicto. So that would be, I think, their recommendation.
Dennis, are you holding with your aerobic exercise?
Yeah, I'm able to do a fair amount of exercise. I wouldn't say that the blood counts have reduced my capability that I've noticed over the last year.
That may also help restore some of those blood counts. Maybe we have to send John Madden up to Wisconsin with his mountain bike to help you out. That's what we got to do.
I used to live there.
Oh, you used to live there? Oh, okay. So you know the trails. We'll be getting you riding with McGuire before long.
Well, no mountains here. Some good lakefront bike trails.
I bet you that John Madden has found some pretty challenging trails in Wisconsin. That's my bet. I'm not sure, but I hazard to put money on that.
Yeah, there's the Wars Wisconsin Off-Road Race Series is the second best race series in the country, behind Texas. And there's about 7 good venues for mountain biking out there.
Probably Kettle Moraine is one of them.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Jack, Baruch, you're up.
I'll be brief. Last time I spoke to you, you told me my doubling time was pretty long at 14 months, and I had a surprise yesterday. I had a routine exam with my internist. He did a PSA on me, and it went from 0.67 August 8th to 0.9. So, it's very dramatic. I've been flat for 5 years since the reoccurrence, and it just seems to be, moving up fast. I don't know what it means. It scares me, even though after I hear what you guys have to say, it sounds relatively early in the journey, but still, I just wonder what your thoughts are about that. So my doubling time is now 5.1 months. He wants me, Belusic wants me to repeat the test in a couple of weeks just to rule out a fluke or a lab error, but I don't feel very optimistic about that because it seems like it never is a lab error. And I just don't know what to do at this point. Peter Carroll didn't respond. I guess he thinks at this level it's going to go up and down. That's what he told me when I was in California. And I'd like to get a scan. I'd like to see where it is, whatever it is. I don't know if I'm ever going to find it. I hope I do so I can at least feel good about the treatment if they're going to go about treating it, or if I'm just going to let it ride and let time, take its course. But I'm wondering about avidity, Axumin or choline, and where I can have that done, whether it can be done at Sylvester. I don't trust the readers. I sort of trust the readers at Sloan Kettering in California and Mayo, the places I've been, but I don't know. I'm new to Sylvester, and the last PSMA they forgot to tell, they gave me water to drink before I went in to have the scan, and my bladder was so full that they couldn't even see, the prostate fossa. So I just feel a little spooked by that. That's where I'm at. Whatever you can say, I'd appreciate it.
Rick posted a question in the chat box, Jack. Did you use the same lab?
Oh, yes, I used Quest Lab, same lab.
Okay. And you said your doubling time was what?
Well, last time I spoke to you last week, it was 14 months. Now it's 5.1 months.
Well, but you have to base the doubling time on more than just the one previous result.
Well, the way I was taught to do it backwards, maybe I'm doing it incorrectly, but I took the 0.9, which is 9/16. Then I took the 0.67, which is 8/9. Then I took the 0.5, which is 6/8. I took the 0.37, which is 3/8 March. So between March and 9, the nomogram, the Sloan Kettering nomogram that I used came out at 5.1. But it's a 1 month. I don't know if you have to do it every 3 months. I had done it essentially 3 months, then 2 months, and then 1 month. Is it all the same? I'm new at doing doubling times.
Well, okay, you did it right. I thought you were just basing it on the one previous result.
No.
You had several points. Yeah.
The past 4, right.
Jack,
It means,
Well,
Jack, here's my thought, and maybe some others will chime in. The big issue is we don't know if you're PSMA avid. This is the big problem, because the last 2 PSMA scans haven't seemed to show anything.
That's right.
I really like the idea of you trying an Axumin scan, and we know the Axumin scan is pretty effective at PSAs of greater than 1.0. So you're right on the cusp of that. I mean, you could try right now. It's close enough, but we know, by and large, 1.0 or higher, and see what that shows. What do other people think?
I agree with that. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Better than choline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, they're both metabolic scans. Used to be years ago, they wouldn't take you at Mayo for a choline scan unless your PSA was 2.0 or higher.
He took me at
They may have changed that over the years, but
in 2018, Quan took me at 0.13, because I
Oh,
was
really?
researching that. Yeah, he took me because he had a whole bunch of patients and he showed me all the scans who were oligometastatic at around that neighborhood. And they had, bone metastasis all over the place. He wanted to rule out my being one of those candidates. And so,
Yeah, I mean, it's always possible that, you're looking at patients who aren't producing PSA, but they do have progression of their cancer. And so, yeah, the choline will pick it up. Probably Axumin would pick it up too, if you happen to be someone who doesn't produce much PSA.
well, we'll see. Okay.
It's difficult to interpret all that data. But I agree with Rick. Axumin's worth a try.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. John, did you want to say something? I think you were looking to get in before.
No, just the same thing as you guys said.
Okay.
I think it would be very nice to get an Axumin scan. I hope it shows us what's going on, because we know how worried Jack is about this and how difficult it is to interpret this information because it creeps along so slowly. Unfortunately, we don't have the usefulness of a PSMA scan apparently for him. So yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Jack, didn't you say that there was some cellular test that Peter Carroll had talked about that you could do to see if you were PSMA avid?
No, he doesn't know what when the discussion between Sloan Kettering and Peter Carroll, it became sort of a rebuttal where he speculated at Sloan Kettering that I was one of the 10%ers early in the game, with the first PSMA. And Peter Carroll said, "How does he know that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. He speculated. He's just guessing." I said, "You have to have a tissue diagnosis, and you have to have a piece of tissue, and you have to do a histological analysis to determine whether or not you're truly PSMA avid." That's what Peter Carroll told me. So he said, "You can't make that diagnosis speculatively," although I guess you can, but I don't know if it's accurate or not. That's the only thing Peter Carroll discussed with me as far as avidity. He still believes I'm avid, still, that I'm one of the 90 or 80% of people who are avid. I don't know. I don't know what that's based upon. I think that's as good a guess as Sloan Kettering believing I'm not avid at 10%, but although I feel more comfortable with Peter Carroll than I do with Danila. But what can I say? Here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know that it's not great to get into a pissing contest between these guys. I know that from experience.
There's a lot of ego there, a lot of ego.
Yes. Absolutely.
A quick question on that scan. How do you spell that? Acumen?
It's in the chat box.
Axumin.
Axumin. It's not, if you're PSMA avid, the PSMA scan is a much better scan.
Right.
Interestingly enough, Blue Earth, who makes Axumin, is now looking at getting into the PSMA business. They told me that when I was in DC last week, 2 weeks ago. So they're going to be introducing their PSMA test pretty soon. Although they still think that there's a role for the Axumin test going forward, especially for those people who are not PSMA avid. But
Let me ask you one quick question, just academically, and you're probably well aware of this. I just learned it today when I was reading something on cryoimmune focal therapy.
Cryoimmune focal therapy or cryofocal therapy?
Cryoimmune focal therapy, where they're utilizing it's a site they're doing a study right now, www.ramparthealth.com, and they're looking for people who either just don't want to continue the therapy they're having or are at the end of the line therapeutically, and it's up in a place called Rochester, Michigan. I don't know where Rochester, Michigan is. And it's very interesting where they're injecting Keytruda directly into the tumor, and they're using a cryo, and they're using cyclophosphamide and Keytruda, Yervoy, and GM-CSF. So it's a whole protocol here for. It sounds very hopeful, but I guess the fact that they're doing a study on it, they don't have definite answers. So I'll send you the site.
Well, hold on a minute. I mean, what are they doing? Where are they injecting this? Into the gland?
Right into the tumor, wherever it is, whether it's in a metastatic, if they can get to it, or the actual cancer, the prostate itself.
Okay, so that they're injecting the metastatic sites with this concoction?
In addition, right.
I mean,
but they do cryotherapy and injecting the areas with checkpoint inhibitors. And then they use something called granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor,
right.
and to boost the blood cell counts to enhance the immune response. Then cyclophosphamide also.
Yeah, it's above my pay grade, and Herb just left. I would have very much liked to hear what Herb said about it, but what about the rest of the brain trust? We haven't had anything from Ben Nathanson all meeting. I think he's sleeping there.
Well, I just want to let you guys know it.
What do you guys think of? I mean, this sounds pretty exotic.
You never heard of it. We got to see the proposal.
Oh,
now that we're proposal readers, thanks to Len.
I've heard of this before, a couple of years ago, actually. But
that's right.
There were some guys down in Mexico who were doing intratumoral injection of checkpoint inhibitors and immune stimulants like Jack is talking about. Also, possibly somebody in Florida was doing it, but he was an MD, an oncologist. He was doing it on himself. He had prostate cancer, and I don't recall, what happened to him or what the results were. But anyway, it's not brand new. It's been around, and it makes sense, right? I mean, if you want to avoid the systemic toxicity of the checkpoint inhibitors, why not try and inject it right into the tumor?
Exactly.
Keep it local. But
yeah.
Jack, did you say this was a clinical trial?
I'll give you this site. If anybody wants to write it down, it's www.rampart, RAMPART health.com, or www.clinicaltrials.gov/CT2/NCT04713371. 04.
Can we get you to post it in the chat window, please? Please, Dr. Jack.
Okay, I'll figure out how to do that. Okay,
RampartHealth.com, I think is what he said, but
Rampart, RAMPART health.com. So there.
Okay.
Whether it's hokey or legitimate, I don't know. I just was sort of fascinated when I was reading it.
Well, it's got to be somewhat legitimate if it's in clinicaltrials.gov.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that means that it was reviewed by an IRB.
Mm-hmm.
Institutional Review Board. They have to determine the ethics and proof of principle of trials before they agree to go ahead.
I'll post it up there, and I'm going to look up more myself. But I'm not at that point. But certainly, if I am, it sounds interesting.
Are they charging for the trial, Jack?
Nope.
Good.
No, the only thing it says here that There are no costs to those eligible for the study other than possible travel and lodging near the clinical trial study site, medical facility. The study center may bill your insurance if it covers the cost of some lab tests and imaging, but patients are not expected to pay anything out of pocket. They're doing it for solid tumors in general, and prostate, they've done more than breast.
Okay.
Phase 2, it
Thank you.
says. So there's got to be a phase 1 somewhere.
Okay.
So you apply for eligibility, they contact you if they feel you're eligible at that site, www.clinicaltrials.gov. How do I
Thank you.
post that?
Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Interesting.
So how are we doing on time now, Rick?
We've got a couple of minutes left. Do we have still anyone else?
Not on my list.
Well, then I knew you'd finish right on time, man. I knew it.
Yeah, I got a reputation to keep up.
I know. I think we had one multiple sclerosis person came into this group, but they left pretty quickly. I saw somebody come in, but they left. So I think they were a MS person. And I will tell you guys, there's not so many of you on, but tomorrow night for our Solo Arts Heal, I'm going to be speaking to our wonderful, wonderful art instructor who has also lived with MS since her early 20s. That's Hannah Garrison. I don't know if anybody in this crew has actually taken the art class, but it gets rave reviews. And we're spending an hour, and she's got a canvas, and she's going to be painting on her canvas whilst I'm interviewing her and talking to her about how she's used her art to heal herself and heal others. And it should be a great show, and it will be recorded. It will be on our Solo Arts Heal. But she's very special, Hannah, and I'm really, really looking forward to talking to her about it. And of course, we've got a couple of Solo Arts Heal veterans still in the group, still here still attending right now. Somebody's hiding behind their hand when we say that.
Hey, Rick, whatever happened to John Ivory? He doesn't show up on this call anymore.
No, he's around and he's doing better. He's been going through a pretty rough time, and then he lost his mom, and then he lost his dad about 2 months ago, and he's trying to get rid of his dad's house and just a lot of stuff. So we don't see him here anymore, but he's doing okay. And Frank will be ready for you in a minute. We're about to close this room and come in again.
I'm out.
Okay, we'll see you in a minute. And so he's
Rick,
doing
let me know if that went
okay, and he
through.
looked much better today, and he's doing a wonderful job with Solo Arts Heal. So if any of you are performers, or you know anybody else who's a performer who's used their art to help them and others heal, let us know, because we need folks, and we're always looking for folks. But I think tomorrow's show, which is free and drop in, if you look under Solo Arts Heal, you'll figure out how to get there. Will be a lovely show. I think it'll be a really, really great show. So, all right, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here, Len.
Did I stop the recording?
Did I get through?